What's going on in the world, man? Like, what are you? I know right before we started, you said you want to talk about America, its relations to its allies, the tariffs, the Trump stuff, but is there anything? I mean, we can even start there. Do you think there's been any net positive to the tariffs?
Honestly, no. I know
Okay.
you're supposed to say on the one hand, on the
But
other
you
hand.
say whatever you
I'll
want.
tell you, to me, the tragedy of this is like one of the superpowers of America, the real superpowers, is that we have this group of countries that are our allies, that are friendly with us, that trade with us, that we've built this ecosystem. And so you can't just look at what we can do. What you have to really ask yourself, what can we do along with Europe, along with Japan, along with Australia, because they're all on board. They're all part of the American ecosystem.
Yep.
And if you look at the tariffs, the way Trump is doing them, they actually get slammed the most because they're being punished for trading with us closely. Because the
right.
ones that we have a lot of trade with are the ones that end up getting the
Tariff
worst.
even higher.
Tariffs. I mean, crazily, the
Yeah, that is something that I never, I still don't understand. Obviously, you want everyone to play fair, and I get the motivation behind it is to change behavior, meaning Americans' behavior, right? Instead of buying that washing machine from, you know, a country or a manufacturer who manufactures overseas, you want to buy American made, which I can agree with that, which is usually going to be a little bit more expensive depending on the product. But it generally is going to be more expensive. I had to do a home renovation and on my duplex, and I'm going to make a video actually going to be coming out soon, actually going to Home Depot and going through all the product reviews and the different things that I used. And actually, most of the items that I recommend to people to buy are American made for a couple reasons. One, the parts are easier to obtain, and two, um, you're gonna get that longevity. Just my opinion when it comes to that stuff. Not all of it, but that's just been my experience in the industry and working in real estate. Is you generally are going to get a little bit of a better product. You may pay a little bit more, but it is going to be a better product when it comes to those type of stuff like appliances and whatnot. Um, so yeah, again, I understand they're trying to change Americans' behavior because look, especially in this economy, we're all trying to get a deal. We want the best price, right? Which is usually made in China, which most things are made in China, and they're trying to, rein us in a little bit to where we don't have to, we can support our businesses home, manufacturing home, and I largely agree with the tariffs. Most of our pharmaceuticals, for sure, in my opinion, should be made here. They should not be farmed out to countries who just frankly don't like us very much. I don't think it's a good idea anyway. Could be a national security. I remember during a pandemic, doing all the baby foods shortages. I was just had my son, and with the couldn't buy formula and things like that nature, and you had to buy it. They were getting it from overseas, and I was like, What is? Why don't we manufacture it here in the U.S.?" So I thought that was weird, a little interesting. So yeah, I get the sentiment, but let's see what he has to say.
one country exempt from all the tariffs is Russia. But even if Trump had thrown Russia in, the truth is we don't do that much business with Russia.
Maybe
So
that's
it
why,
it wouldn't make a big difference. But it's the Canadians who've like linked their economy to ours for the last 30, 40 years that
Yeah.
are getting slammed. It's the Mexicans who've reformed their economy to, essentially make it almost like an integral part of the American supply chain. Like we don't make cars in America anymore. We make
Yeah.
cars in North America.
Right.
We go, and the parts go back and forth 16 times, which is why the tariff rates are sometimes really high because every time one part crosses a border,
Oh, you gotta pay that
you got to
tariff.
pay that tariff. And
Yeah.
it's the Europeans. So to me, that's the tragedy. It's like we don't realize that's the unique thing about America. Like,
Yeah.
you know how many military alliances China has? Russia and North Korea. You know how many we have? 59.
Yeah.
Right. That's what makes us special.
So help us understand this. Just like the average American, like myself, doesn't really know much about this. I keep hearing people saying, "Oh, these tariffs are devastating. They're bad for foreign relations. They're bad for foreign policy." Yet many of these countries that we are now imposing tariffs on tariff us. So why is it only bad for foreign relations when we are tariffing them? I think the average American looks at that and be like, well, tariffs can't be that bad for foreign relations if they're all tariffing us.
Right. So first important thing to understand, again, among our allies, this is the advanced countries in the world, average tariffs before Trump came to office were 2.5%. So for everyone. So you can always find some...
Averages get tricky though, right?
Agreed.
Because,
so the Europeans protect their agriculture.
And so how much do they tariff us on agrarian products?
So there are two kinds of things. One, they tariff us. It's not so much the tariffs. It's they don't import American chicken.
They refuse to take our stuff because they want to
believe that our chicken is washed in chlorine. They think that's bad. You know, there are a lot of issues.
Started that?
There's a lot of issues on which there are a lot of issues on which Europeans basically agree with RFK Jr. Which is to say that we have too many chemicals in our food, things like that.
So they might be right about that.
Dude, I agree.
I actually think they're right about it.
Okay, so quick story here. Working in commercial real estate, you meet a lot of interesting people. You meet different tenants that do different types of things in businesses, restaurants, you name it, logistics, whatever it is. And so this was maybe 4 years ago now. I had a tenant moving in from Ireland, and I won't disclose any names or anything like that, but they moved into one of our properties, and their business was creating broths and things of that nature, like for soups and whatever dishes. And I remember they didn't use a lot of American made things. They tend to ship a lot of their stuff from their factory in Ireland over. And I remember in the city, they had to get all their inspections done and things of that nature really quickly so they can get their operation off the ground. So they were thinking, oh man, we got to go, above and beyond on the food safety and, how they treated everything. And they had to get, everything was top of the line. And I remember it was a pretty expensive TI. TI stands for tenant improvement. That's just negotiation between the landlord and tenant. Sometimes the landlord says, hey, we'll give you $50,000 to build out your space the way you want it, because I worked with a lot of commissary kitchens. But, so the tenants from Ireland, and they're going above and beyond, right? Because Ireland has a much higher food standard than we do over here. And they had their inspection with the USDA, and I had to show up there, property manager, blah, blah, blah. I didn't have to, but I did that just as a courtesy. And what I learned was so eye-opening. And this happened a couple times during my, when I was managing commercial kitchens. My tenants were super shocked that one, they passed, they got really high scores and they passed, but some of the things that they were doing, their practices weren't even a requirement, but they were so conditioned to doing it because it was so commonplace to them that they were like, this is just what you do. This is how you do it. We don't know any other way. And they were shocked that our standards were so low to meet the bare minimum. And they're like, we would never even consider that because our products have our products are good products. We sell them at a good price, but they were just so taken back by that. And I remember that day after the inspectors left, they were just like, that's it? Really? I was like, well, yeah. And they were just, so I say that to say, for sure, our food standards need to come up. We're behind to be this good of a country. So yeah, I agree with that. Fix our food.
One of the few areas where I totally agree with RFK Jr. is on all that stuff. He points out, if you look at
on everything,
a box of cereal in Europe has 8 ingredients. The same box of cereal has 18 ingredients. Everybody what are the 10 things that we're putting in that they ban? So some of it is those kind of tariff barriers, non-tariff barriers. But the main point, because what you're saying is true, is that they tariff us. Look. everybody protects a few things, but we lived in a very low tariff world, so that these were not major distortions. And you could have your pet peeve, like you wanted to protect some agriculture, we wanted to protect something. What we've done is we've gone from 2.5%, we're at 15% now. So that's like a 6-fold increase. And what that's going to do is make everyone else raise their tariffs more. So suddenly everybody...
Why would it do that?
Because they have to retaliate, right? Well, because their feeling is if you're blocking our goods, we're going to block your goods.
But what if we say, no, you don't do that? You have access to our market, and our market is bigger, and therefore we have some leverage.
Right, and so that is essentially
like when
what Trump is
Costco
doing.
buys a bunch of stuff, they get a much lower price. So when we buy a bunch of stuff, we get a much lower price.
Now remember, the European Union, which on trade acts as one, have about as much power as we do in that sense.
But we're
their market is
dismantling
about
that
as
European
big.
Union every day.
No, the trade stuff, they're pretty unified. So
yeah, but we got England out of there, so we'll get China out of there. We're going to break it down so we have an advantage.
I don't think England's doing great on its own.
No, I tease, but
so you're right. The two kind of players that can go mano a mano
and force
are the Chinese and the European Union, because they've got a bunch of leverage. But we'll always have a slightly higher. So you're right, they won't raise them to the level we do, but they'll raise them a certain amount. And all my point is, who suffers? The consumer, right? The American who goes to Walmart and now his food is more expensive, his clothes are more expensive. And by the way, that you don't give a shit whether this shirt costs you 20% more. But
I don't. But there are people who really do.
But a person who lives on $35,000 a year.
1,000%.
So walk me through this, because
That is true. So again, I'm tying this back to real estate because that's how my brain tends to think of the world. When you work specifically in commercial real estate, there's a thing called a CAM reconciliation. What that stands for is common area maintenance. And every year you reconcile your books and you charge the overage of whatever was budgeted back to your tenants, right? So if one tenant paid, or it's charged on based on the proportion of the property, the building. You add all the common space in there as well. But usually your taxes and insurance are always going to go up without a shadow of a doubt. So what you do is you're chopping that up and you're serving that back to each of those tenants. And then they look at their bill and like, whoa, every year it's gone up and it's increased. Well, during, I think it was 2020, 2021, it increased dramatically because property values went through the roof, right? It almost doubled, if not tripled. And we were like, whoa. And you can challenge some of these taxes and stuff like that. But essentially, that gets passed back down to the tenants. And they carry that burden. So when I think about tariffs and, these tariff wars and things of that nature, it's like, this is going to hurt a lot of people. Generally what you would do in the commercial world, you would try to take it down and gradually bake it in over time. Instead of trying to dump it all into one pot, you just kind of gradually ease it in there over time. And that's how you would account for those overages. Let's continue.
I'm not an economist, but the theory to me that I understand.
Looks great today.
Oh, thank you, dude. I appreciate that.
Incredible.
I put on my wife's products.
I was complimenting him so much that I forgot how handsome you were.
Dude, thank you. I appreciate that. I was feeling left out.
I would go along with that.
Yeah. I mean, he's a good-looking guy. Right?
I fully disagree.
Tan, like the tan. So anyway, as you play out this America First thing, I understood the idea. We go to Middle America a lot for these shows, and I see there used to be manufacturing there, and there's not. And I actually empathize with what they thought Make America Great meant. A lot of them. I'm sure there were racist people, but I think a lot of them were like, yo, we used to have manufacturing, we used to have jobs in the city, and now there's nothing. So, as in my mind, as I play that out, does that not eventually force America to build its own warehouses back up, to build its own manufacturing back up, maybe even forward-thinking things like supercomputer facilities or whatever? Do the tariffs not, in the long run, pay off in that sense or not?
So it's a great question, because that is at the heart, really, of what Trump is trying to do. And I totally agree with you that is a huge problem, that we deindustrialize, and we deindustrialize very fast, and like it hurt certain areas a lot more than everywhere. But here's the problem. When you look at every rich country in the world, what has happened is over time you lose manufacturing and you move into services. And it's a very simple reason why. As you get richer and richer, look at your own lives, okay? As countries get richer and richer, they buy less stuff and they buy more services. So if you look at 1960, about half of all American consumption was on goods. Now, 25% is on goods. Most is on services.
Can you give an example of a service that we would transition
What we are
to?
doing. Entertainment, software services,
So going out to shows,
Right.
dining out would be, these are all services.
all services, law, accounting, finance, consulting, software services, entertainment,
Opposed to a developing country would spend more money on.
making steel, making aluminum.
So the
making,
newly industrialized nations are
Right.
putting as much the possible emphasis that they can on that, whereas we're buying movie tickets.
Now, give you a simple, 80% of the American economy in terms of employment, 80% of Americans are employed in the services economy in America. You know how many employed in manufacturing? 8%. And actually, of that 8%, half of all manufacturing jobs are in branding, sales, which are service jobs. So really, it's 4% on the factory floor. So you're taking 85% of Americans, you're taxing them, you're penalizing them to subsidize this 4%, which is shrinking.
Now,
Let me just finish one thought, which is the reason we've surged ahead of all the other countries in the world over the last 30, 40 years, and we have, and I can go through the numbers if you want, is because we embraced the future. We said we're going to lean into technology. We're leaning into services, software services. We're the entertainment. We dominate the world in terms of entertainment. We export all that stuff to the world. We have huge trade surpluses. In other words, we send out a lot more of that than we buy of anybody. What was the last Kazakh movie you saw, right? And
Borat.
but Borat doesn't count. by the way.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I don't understand. In my mind, we are not going to be able to compete with China. I just don't see it on a manufacturing level, the way they can do it. And their cost of living, it's so much cheaper to live over there. I did a review video of CNBC Make It. There's a young lady who moved from, I think it was New York. See, New York or LA. I can't remember. It's on my channel. Look it up. And that story was relatively new. It came out. I do enjoy CBNC Make It. CBNC. Is it CBNC? Anyway, you know what I'm saying. Millennial Make It, I think it's called. And she moved to China and she talked about her cost of living and how it went down and how she just enjoys it. And, she paid a fraction of what she was able to pay living over here. Having said that, it's not a fair comparison. If you were to make $30,000 US, and that's not to knock on anyone making that kind of money, but good luck, especially living in any major city. It's just not going to happen. So the manufacturing jobs, I think bringing some of that stuff back, obviously, I think it's a good thing. I don't think it could hurt. But I also think we need to be thinking forward, investing in technology and in our youth learning technology. We need trades coming back. I know in the commercial industry, real estate, and even not the commercial, just real estate as a whole, finding a skilled carpenter or a decent roofer, plumber, electrician, they're hard. And what I've seen in my own industry in my time in, a lot of the guys who I used to work with who were the older gentlemen who were been in there 20, 30 years and have mastered the craft and can wire up a whole building in no time. Those guys they're retiring. They're getting out. And we even have in some properties, old buildings like have these elevators that are just a very old, antiquated systems that the young techs that are coming out of these schools, the trade schools, don't know how to operate. And I've even recently been in a situation where the elevator went down. We had to get on the phone, ask the guy in retirement to come out and help us out and service the elevators, because the young guys, we just don't know. The only option is to upgrade the elevator, and that's like, if you ever had to look at those contracts, they're very spendy. So I say all that to say, I don't know how we compete just on a simple pound for pound, you know, their ability to manufacture a everyday item like a sofa or a bed. I just don't know how you compete with that here, because we have to pay our people more, right, to just live. And again, I don't. Someone else smarter than me can figure that out, but I just don't see it. Let's continue on.
But by the way, Trump doesn't count this. For him, the services economy doesn't exist. All he looks at when he looks at these tariff rates is stuff, goods. How many cars did I sell you? How many cars did I? But the point is, we became the world's leading economy because we leaned into the future, and that's where. So, I'll give you a simple statistic. German wages and U.S. wages 25 years ago were roughly the same. Roughly speaking, we were a little higher. We're now our wages are 30% higher than German wages. Wow. European wages, on average, were 50% higher. If Britain were to join the United States as the 51st state, Britain would be poorer than every state in the union. It is poorer than Mississippi on a per capita GDP basis. Wow. Why? Because we embrace services.
So how can they sustain life if they have such a small GDP?
Well, they're smaller countries, but so I'll give you the numbers.
Yeah, very interesting conversation. Played most of it, but you guys let me know what you think. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and share. And very interesting. I kind of like this topic. We'll see if there's any more out there. All right, take care. Until next time.